luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware. Why my mind malfunctions into disregard? Smile, I walk to get a drink from the machine. Why my mind malfunctions? The luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware.
Hi guys, and welcome to this education seminar. My name is Paul Dennison, and I am at ELEVEN Australia Global Brand Artist. I'm here today to present to you a reverse balayage technique. Now, this is something that when I'm educating, I find people struggle a little bit with this. I find people find it's very easy to lighten hair and create lifting hair. But it's when people want to go the other way and they want to add depth in, that's where people tend to kind of come a little bit unstuck. So I'm hoping today I can talk you through a very simple, very salon-friendly process, which will allow you to get great results every single time. One thing I would say with any kind of education and any kind of new technique, it's with anything that practice will make perfect. So the more you do this, the easier it will become, and the better results you will also get at any time. So just to show you how this is going to look, this is the result that we created. You can see on this side here, I'll just unclick this as well. So this is our starting point for our technique that we have. So anytime working on intuition head, obviously we have this kind of like natural kind of base, nice and cool, not too warm, so a nice kind of base. And then this is our final result. I've tried to get the light in as best as I can here, but obviously definitely look better in natural daylight results. But you can see that we've worked a bit of depth in through those roots, and we've created real nice softness into those ends there as well. Now, I've purposely not really dressed this out too much because I wanted to be able to kind of take some sections and show you how this kind of looks before going in and working on the technique. I'm going to take my comb here and I'm just going to section off some areas here. So where we've created this is we've created this using like a layering of color technique. And you can kind of see that we wanted to keep that strength around the face, but we wanted to create, let's just zoom this back here, an area of depth as well. So as you can see, wherever the hair kind of moves, this is going to sit really seamlessly, and it's just going to give you a really beautiful result. Also paying attention to framing around the face area, keeping a little bit more lift in through these front sections, in order to create a frame around the face, which is going to kind of soften everything through there. But it's also paramount that we don't have any kind of lines or anything when the hair is tied back. And like this as well. So how did we create this? So in order to create this look, we used the new shades that have been released by ELEVEN Australia. Now, I'll just quickly talk through the new shades that we have. And they have been a really great kind of addition to an already amazing color palette. Now, I take it you've all got your 11 shade guides. And within these shade guides, you'll have the inserts sent into you. So we've got 7 new permanent shades, and we've got 4 new demi-permanent shades as well, all the liquid colors. Now, one thing that I really found when I moved over and started using the brand, a lot of my clients really like that really flat, really ash tone. And the new 0.7s I find are just incredible. So that's what I've been using on here today. Well, not completely 0.7, but I've been adding 0.7 into some of my existing colors just to soften some of those shades. I'm a really big fan of custom mixing and recreating that kind of bespoke color for the individual client. So we've also got the addition, I'll just talk about the clear before we start. Now, the clear in the permanent range is a great addition to the portfolio, because that's what that's going to do. Is it's going to allow you to make certain colors slightly more translucent. It's going to be able to give you beautiful shine as well, and it's going to help you create more of those custom shades. In addition to the 0.7s, we've got the ash in the 10s as well. They're all beautiful. They're great for creating cool, natural blondes. And in the demi-permanent range, we've got the 0.02s as well, which are amazing for making the smoky brunettes. So if you haven't already tried them, I would recommend kind of getting hands on them and playing with them. Whenever I get a new color range a new color shade, what I like to do is I like to kind of experiment with them on hair swatches. Now, I was talking the other day when we were doing the seminar, and we had a model who came in, and she had lots of her hair cut off to start with. I mean, she had a good 6-7 inches cut off her head, and all the ends were pre-lightened already. So I said to the guys, I was like, keep the hair and use that for your swatches. So you don't always have to invest in false hair. You don't have to invest in actual swatches. Sometimes using maybe hair that's being cut off. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but you get a really good kind of understanding of how that color is going to work on the hair as well. So today we are going to be doing what we call a two-step color application. So we're going to be first off working color through the root area. So we're going to be applying shade number 1 through the root, and then we're going to be mixing up some lightener as well, and then we're going to be working on how we create that blend of color through the ends. So I am going to mix up our first color, which is going to be 40 grams of 7.31, along with 10 grams of 5.7 with 3%. I'm going to mix that up now. So a couple of pointers when you're mixing your color, especially if you're mixing a custom shade, is to make sure that you are mixing in your color completely. Now, in order to do that, we always use a whisk, because that's going to make sure all that color is mixed. There is times, for example, when I'm making pastel colors, maybe pinks or lilacs, that we're using a level 10. So maybe we're using 40 grams of a level 10, and we're only adding in 1 or 2 grams of 6.66. Now, what we want to make sure we do is we really got to make sure that color is mixed in and have a really good consistency. So sometimes you can even mix the color before you apply a developer. That's a really good tip. Or just really making sure that color is blended completely through. So we are working to make sure we get a really nice consistency within the bowl. And then the other thing I like to do is just make sure I'm starting with a nice clean bowl. I like to work quite clean and quite neat, so we're making a really nice professional application. So let me get my gloves on. Now, applying this color is really important, and there is some points to watch, which I'm going to kind of talk through on our way as we're applying this. So first, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be applying that color just to the root area, my outside of brush. Now for the roots application, I would always use a small 11 Australia brush. I'm just going to section this into our quadrants. Now, obviously, I've already completed one side of the head. So I'm just going to mask this section off, because we're going to be doing this section second. And I'm just going to clip that up and out of the way. Then we're going to be working through this back area. And we're just applying this colour just into the first inch and a half of the root area. But we're making sure that as we go, we're keeping our tools clean. And we're working through just applying that colour straight onto the root area. Just having to make sure I clip that previously coloured area out of the way. Kind of strange, only having to colour wash out of the head. So we've outlined our two sections, as you can see. Now, there's no right or wrong way of doing this, and everything that I do, obviously, the individual, however you find it more comfortable to apply the colour. I'm going to be starting from the back here. And I'm going to be pulling everything back here. Now, the reason I do this, first off, a couple of reasons. Obviously, when we are working day to day within the salon, when all the client's hair colour is applied, the client will like to move around. To like to get up, maybe go to the toilet, get a coffee. So in order to make sure all the hair colour is away from the face, it's going to make sure that that hair color transfer isn't going to kind of happen onto any of the face area as well, or skin. So again, we're just working our way through this root area. We're not worrying too much about pushing that color down into the ends of the hair. And also as well, we're just keeping a towel just to keep our tools nice and clean as we work. Now, one of the points to watch on this is if as you're applying through, you might happen to accidentally get some colour through the ends of the hair. Now, don't panic too much about that because we will be taking colour through. But what's ideal is if you have a little bit area there, it's just to kind of just remove any of that excess colour off as well as you go. Just makes life a little bit easier for you on the next steps there as well. So we keep working, just tapping that colour into the roots for the first inch or two. Now, obviously, this to the client or to what we're doing here is quite a bit of a change. And one conversation that I always like to have with my clients is talking about change to them. Now, when a client comes and sits in your chair and she says she fancies having a change, in our heads as hairdressers, we go, oh my God, she's going to want to go completely blonde or she's going to want to go red. But actually, that's because us hairdressers we become slightly desensitized to our own hair. We don't think twice about chopping all our hair off or maybe going brunette after being blonde for so long. But to a client, change can be as simple as adding a little bit of depth into hair or maybe having a few foils applied through like an all-over colour. So when we talk about change or when the clients ask for change, we want to embrace that. And we want to push them in a direction of change. I was going to do a couple of things. First off, it's going to make yourself, the hairdresser, excited about doing people's hair because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're doing the same clients all the time, doing the same thing. That's going to lead to you becoming becoming quite bored as a hairdresser. But it's also going to lead the client to leave you and go find someone else, especially if she feels like she's become part of the furniture. So also, We're just using a piece of foil there just to isolate that hair that we've already coloured, because these sections now we're going to be pulling backwards, and we're just going to lay that on top of that hair as well through there. Can we see this? Let's have a look. It's hard to do it without putting my back into it. So when we suggest change to clients, if a client comes to me, I would suggest three options. We have a soft change, a medium change, or a hard change. So a soft change would be tonal. So maybe we would introduce a different glossing service, maybe add a little bit more warmth, maybe add a little bit more fullness to the hair. A medium change would be to maybe add a few freehand pieces through the hair, as well as maybe having that global colour. And obviously, what you could do is also you could introduce a few foils. But also then a hard change would be a complete change. So complete, we go from a blonde to a brunette, to maybe a reverse balayage. So therefore, you are giving the client those options rather than her feeling like she's kind of getting overlooked in the salon day to day. You know, there's nothing worse than working with someone who has already mixed up their client's color before that client even walks through the door. So we are continuing to work these sections back. And as we work these sections back, we're pulling all the hair away from the face. And again, just applying through the first inch and a half of that root there. Paying attention to keep everything tidy. We are really being aware how much tension we're applying to the hair as well, because we want to kind of make sure that hair is lying flat to the head. Which is easier said than done when you're working on a tuition head, but do tend to wobble around a little bit. And then through to the front hairline here, we just tap in that colour just through the root area. Making sure that on this front hairline here, we're not going too deep. And we're just touching, especially if the client's got any new hair. You don't want to go too heavy with your root colour around this hairline. So what I like to do then, before we move on to our next step, is just to re-pick up this section. Obviously with a clean comb, I like to just tease that colour through the hair and just comb that into place. Because again, we are going to be starting from the back on our next section. Because layering that colour on top of each other is going to make it easier for you to work through the hair and through the sections. When you've done that first section, it should kind of be looking something a little bit like this. Okay? So again, you paid real attention to not getting too much colour through the ends of the hair. But don't worry too much if you do, because we will be able to kind of pick that out and pull some lightness through there as well. Now, the second colour that we are going to be mixing is our lightener. And we're going to be using the 6 levels. And we're going to be using that with 6% or 21. Now, any of the lightning ranges you can use really on this. I'm using the 6 levels mainly because of the consistency, and maybe because we want to not really lighten the hair that much because she's already kind of previously lifted. Whereas if the client generally is going from lighter to darker, you would still maybe want to have something to kind of clean those ends up. So the 6 levels is going to be great for that because it's very gentle on the hair. Also, the consistency is actually really quite nice. Alternatively, what you could use is the clear. And you could use the clear with maybe 3%. And you could use that instead of the lightener because that's going to act as almost like a barrier to keep those ends light through that. It's also going to get the cosmetic benefits of covering the hair as well as increasing the shine into the hair. So first thing I'm going to do is just going to mix up a lightener. So there with this, while I just do that. Again, using a whisk in order to create real nice consistency. I like to mix my lighteners on a 1:2 ratio. I find that is, for me, the best consistency. Others, if you like a slightly thicker consistency, mix on a 1:1. Or you could mix it on a 1:3 if you are looking to get slightly ruddier consistency. And again, let me just tap it off any of the excess that we have on our whisk. And you're just going to use our towels again to kind of keep the bowl nice and clean through that. So starting off nice and clear. For this, I'm going to use a slightly larger brush and I like that. Then also going to be using some oil to act as a barrier as well. Now, you could also use a film, which is also a great kind of barrier. Anything really which you can put in between each section, really going to help you. Now, through this back area here, we're going to be working up in sections, but we want to keep working on a slight diagonal. So we're going to be working with the round of the head. We're not going to be going straight up. We're going to be working on a slight diagonal. All that's going to do is that's going to help our color to blend. We're not going to see any of those lines. And the color is going to like overlay on top of each other nicely, as opposed to sitting next to each other where you can see definition. If you want to see definition, then you would obviously work on more of a horizontal. Or if you want to see more of a stripe, then you would work on a, mine's gone bright, the opposite of horizontal. Sorry, vertical or horizontal. So we're going to be working with just behind ear. You're creating this section. Now, to create a slight amount of depth through this back section, I'm going to take our root color. Here, I'm going to be taking this right away. Now, remember that we are working creatively on tuition heads. So we know that we're not going to obviously get the same result as if we were to be pretty big in the hair. I'm using a slightly stronger color because I wanted to show you how this color is going to look once it's all applied into the hair. Hence why I used a slightly darker shade through there as well. So our first section, I'm just going to create that slightly deeper, darker outline through that back area. Now, the next section, again, keep our tools nice and clean. And this is where the technique then will start to come into effect. We're going to take another diagonal section. So here. Going to set that hair out of the way. We're going to hold with tension on our separation point and make sure you guys can kind of see this. And I'm going to create a large weaved section. We're then going to split that hair into two. And we're going to flip that top weave up and out of the way. Now, working with this underneath section, I'm just going to melt that colour down through the root a little bit more here. And we can use a technique. We'll make sure we've got in frame set. And use a technique with our fingers just to smudge that colour down the hair shaft a little bit more, just to kind of stretch out we are going to freehand our lightness through those ends. So we've got our darker colour leading into our lighter colour here. Making sure that that's all completely saturated through that. So you can see we're melting that darker colour, pulling that down the hair slightly into our lightener through those ends. We're then going to use a small piece of foil. Just stick that on top of that section there. And then we're going to drop that weave down in the top. Now through that weave there, again, we're going to take our root colour and we're going to apply that through the rest of the hair. So that's going to create a real nice blend of colour. I like to work with my tools that I have. So I like to work with the comb, making sure that colour is saturated through. Using my fingers to blend. And then I'm making sure that we've applied enough colour through there that everything is saturated. Now, where the hair is shorter through the back, it's slightly harder to make sure that that bleed, because you've got a smaller area to create that bleed. But as you get through to the top, where the hair gets longer, you're going to find you've got a lot more area to play with. So again, after each section, wiping our tools down and just getting any of that excess colour off our gloves. So we can then isolate that section with a piece of foil. And then we're going to be working on our next section. So again, it's following the round of the head. We're going to be taking a section of about an inch wide. You don't want to take these sections too thin, because otherwise you may start to lose the technique slightly. And again, when we're weaving, we're making sure we weave all the way through from top to bottom. We're not just skimming off the hair off the top like we do when we create a highlighted effect. As you can see there, I'll bring that a little bit closer. Can you see how we've got the weave from the top and the bottom there as well? So this is going to be smudged down and then lightness through those ends. And then this dark is then going to sit over the top of that. And that's how it's going to create that beautiful seamless blend that we have there. Yeah, and clip that out of the way, or it's actually going to stay. I'm going to take our section through underneath and bring that colour down slightly more through the hair. We're then going to smudge that down with our fingers. And then we're going to just then get my back right in front of this, working that colour through. into those ends. So this is a real simple technique. I find a lot of the best techniques, it's so better not to overcomplicate the technique, really. Keeping the sections large so you can work quite quickly, quite neatly. You see that there through that bottom area. We brought that darker colour down, and then we lightened that into the ends there as well. And then remember, through that top section, we're going to be applying our darker colour. Now, another thing you can do is you can play around with this technique a little bit in regards of if you want to see more lightness through those ends, what you would do is do a darker section on the underneath where there's less henna. But remember, what we are doing here is you're putting colour back into the hair, and we want to kind of create more depth. So we are leaving out less blonde. If we wanted to see more blonde, we would do this as our lighter area and our underneath section as our darker area. If I was to do a rebalancing of colour, and let's say a client has a demi-permanent or a liquid colour through the root, and then she has some balayage freehand pieces through, you could use this colour to, you could use this technique, to break up some of that colour by taking a weave and then pulling the undersection through with the semi-permanent, and then using your lightener to freehand and clean up those ends as well. So again, just going to do 2 more sections here. Yeah, nice and simple. Big, chunky section. Split that. Obviously, when you're demonstrating these things, they can take a little bit longer to do. But if I was doing this within salon on a client, this would take me, I'd probably book out maybe an hour for this, because it is actually a really quick technique when you get to, sorry, there's someone just at the front door, where you have to kind of get your speed up, obviously. So again, melting that lightener into those ends. And then just using our fingers just to blend that colour up. Making sure we don't go too high into the root. Sometimes I just use my comb just to comb those ends through, because we really want to make sure those ends are really saturated. Into the hair. And I'm going to do this on the front because I wanted to show you both. When you get a little bit more confident with your application, you can actually leave the foil out if you want. The foil is always there as a bit of a safety net, I find, for the hairdresser. It's also going to help to keep everything nice and clean. So you could just use like a piece of film to wrap like one piece of film, whereas you don't have to use individual foil if you feel that way and you feel more confident. So as you can imagine, all these sections that we're applying, the majority of the colour is the darker colour. Remember, that's 7.31 with 5.7. And what that's going to do is that's just going to create that depth. And then we're also having those lighter pieces kicking out in between as well. So one thing that I've really been playing with is adding the point sevens into some of the other shades as well. I've used them on their own, and I think they give you such immaculate results. But I do love them mixed in with the 0.3 shades. Now, if you think that might be a slight kind of contradiction, because the 7 is there to counteract the warmth, but they just give you a really nice muted gold, which was what we've got here. It's going to give you that perfect base. And it's going to stop, especially if you're working over pre-lightened hair sometimes, or lighter hair, when you put the color back in, it's going to stop your results from coming out too flat. I just find it gives you such a really nice balance of color. And it really helps to make that color much more bespoke for the individual. You know, when we see our clients and they say that they don't like the gold or the warmth in their hair, it's generally they don't like to have that halo of the orange tone reflecting in the sun. So using a 0.7 is a really good way to combat that. So this last piece now of our first section. And you can see we're just taking that darker color and applying that through to this root area. And we're just pulling that down over the top. So super quick, super easy as we work through with that. So taking our time just to make sure all our tools are clean, our hands are clean, before moving on to that next section. So we're just going to fold some of this foil out of the way, because I'm going to start working now on this front section. So as we work through here, again, because we've been working on that diagonal, we want to continue to work on a diagonal throughout here until we create this triangle. That way it's going to allow us to keep a little bit more lift around that swimp area. We want to make sure we keep the majority of that lightness through the front. We still want to see some nice blonde through here, and we want to interject that blue color and smudge that through so we get that really nice blend that we have through here. Yeah, so you still want to keep that brightness and that lightness, especially on a bob shape. That's the area where you really want to have your lightener through there, kind of frame face, and then your real lighter ends through here as well. So in order to do that, what we can do is we can pre-section our hair. So let me see how it's best to do that. This generally is only going to take 3 or 4 sections, this front area. So it's hard. So as you can see, this is our first section here. Our second section then is going to sit over the top there. But what we would probably do is subdivide this section into 2 as we go. And then we've just got our smallest section, which is a small triangle, which just sits over the top. So I'm going to do this without the foil in between. So you can see how that color is going to be sitting, because this visually, you can start to see that developing, and you'll be able to see what I mean, rather than putting the foil in between. Now, if this is on a client, obviously, to give you that safety net of if she's going to be moving around, just be aware that doing it this way may allow for some transfer onto the skin. But just be careful of that. Maybe apply something through this underneath section as a barrier, and maybe on the last section. But visually, creatively, you're going to be able to see where we're putting that color in. So I'm going to start with this on our first section. Just combing that color through, that hair through. Let's put it out of the way. So because we want to keep a little bit more lightness around this face area here, I'm only going to be smudging our darker color through this second piece of hair here. Yeah? We smudge that color through into here. I like that spoon. It's those then. Making sure we get a real nice saturation. And then using the back of our finger here, just to blend that color through. So that's section 1 there. Can you see? And then we're going to drop this darker hair down. And we're going to take that color through the rest of the hair from root to tip. Just making sure we cover all of that hair. With this section, we're just going to pull that back slightly. So those are our 2 sections there. Now, as we work on to this second section, remember I said we're going to divide this into 2. Because this area here at the front is our fringe area, and that's going to be our face frame. So we're going to want to work slightly separately there. Again, taking a nice large weaved section. We're going to smudge our root area down. Into the lightness through our ends there. And we can let that sit then just over the top where the other lightness section is as well. Again, cleaning our hands down. This is going to be our darker section. We're making sure that kind of from root to tip is applied to it. Splitting the hair, the darker on this side, the lighter on this side. And then we're going to work on this front section here. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to reverse it. So we're going to put our darkness through the underneath. Remember how we want to get that frame of the face through there? So our darker section. Making sure that's fully combed through. And then we're going to use our lightener through that top section then as well. So this is a really quick and easy technique of keeping your clients feeling fresh, modern, and up to date, really. Working in a freehand kind of lead is a lot, I find it's a lot softer and it's a lot nicer like there's definitely a time and a place for foiled looks, but freehanded looks give such a nice seamless blend of color that your clients will absolutely love. This seems like it's quite a scary technique to attempt, but actually it's really quite straightforward and quite simple. And it's a great way of getting some lift back, some darkness basically into those clients where it's overlifted in the sun at the end of the summer. If it's anything like as warm as it is here in Scotland, we are going to be getting a lot of clients wanting to put a lot more colour back into their hair towards the end of the year. So can you see that lightener just working its way through those lighter pieces through the front here, and then our darker ones through the back. So they're interlocking. Now just for our last section, over the top, this is a little smaller section. We're going to pull our lightness through the underneath. Remember to smudge down that colour just at the root slightly. And we're going to tip that out. Bleeding that colour through. Keeping our hands nice and clean. And then our last section here is going to be, you got it, our darker section through the top there. So quite a quick, quite an easy, and quite an effective technique. And again, just try and make sure we've got full saturation and coverage there as well. So just to recap through on what we've done here to date in order to create this look here. What I'm going to do is add two things and take my gloves off. I'm going to unclip this. So in order to create this beautiful blend of color that we have through here, going from that lighter frame around the face area to a slightly darker, more muted, neutral, just got a little bit of a line in there where we've had to flip in the hair there. You can see how that color will melt from the dark into the lighter through the ends. We've done that by creating interlocking weaved sections. So starting from the back, we applied our formula of 7.31 with 40 grams of 7.31 and 10 grams of 5.7. We've applied that through the root all the way through. And again, then we've re-subdivided the front and the back, and we've layered that color on. We've done our thick sections of 1 inch on a diagonal, and we've weaved right the way through the hair. We've then applied and smudged the root color down slightly and blended that into our liner through those ends. We then isolated that, and then we dropped that top section over, and we pulled the root color right the way through the hair. We've then worked that same technique going up through the front, but we've been really keen to make sure that we keep a lot of that lift into that front area. What that's going to do is that's going to maintain that pop of color and keep that freshness and that blondness around the face. When you find your client goes from being very overly blonded, she still wants to keep an element of that blonde. And as long as she's just got that blonde around her face area through here, you can take the rest of the hair up darker and she's still going to feel that she's got that blonde. So we want to make sure we keep that. By working on that diagonal and keeping that lightness through the ends, then bringing that hair color through, it's going to create that real nice kind of interlocked color and allow that hair, that blondness to come out of those ends, but have that darkness cut through the roots. I hope you've enjoyed our technique today that we've created. As you can see, it's a very modern and very fresh color using the new shades. A very simple, very quick technique that can be adapted to suit any client. You can do this with any shades, obviously maintaining the depth in at the root and working through to those lighter. I hope that you do try this technique, and if you do, feel free to tag us online. Feel free to tag myself as well. My name is Paul Dennison, and we will be able to see your results. Anyway, any questions? Feel free to drop them in the comments. If not, I will see you again soon.
The luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware. Why my mind malfunctions into disrepair.